Are you seriously just a high school graduate? Working with someone from the bottom of the barrel like you, it's going to tarnish the company's reputation. You don't need to come in tomorrow.
The female president's attitude completely changed the moment she learned about my educational background. Despite being scolded and looked down upon, I've always delivered results and earned recognition. I never imagined I'd be fired just because of my education. On the way home, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. It felt like all the hard work I had put in was suddenly rendered worthless. However, a few days later, the chairman, looking flustered, appeared at the company after I left.
Where is the advisor?
What?
Something unbelievable had happened. My name is John Parker. Apparently, my mother had a difficult childbirth and passed away shortly after giving birth to me. In the child care diary she left behind, my mother's determination to raise me without a father was recorded. The diary had been written every day from the early stages of pregnancy, but it abruptly stopped being filled out from the first day of my birth, which was quite poignant. That's how I grew up in an orphanage without even knowing my parents' faces. I had many friends at the orphanage, and I grew up in a kind environment without inconvenience. Still, I wanted to become independent earlier, so I started working after graduating high school. When I discussed it with the orphanage's director during career counseling before graduation, surprisingly, she readily agreed.
I know. Let me ask my friend. It's in the construction industry, and there are jobs on site as well as in the office, such as planning and design. I think you can choose a job that suits you.
Any job is fine. Thank you very much. And so, I was able to work under a very kind president thanks to the introduction from the orphanage's director. I remember when I graduated from high school and first met the president.
Nice to meet you. I'm Max Dalton. Let's work hard together,
He said with a gentle smile. He had a very calm demeanor and said he had been friends with the orphanage's director since his student days. Work started immediately the next day. At first, it was work on the site. The president said it was important to learn about the site first. He taught me everything I didn't know. And as I grew, I started to feel really happy about being able to help others. The director would come by occasionally, worrying about me. You can see me when I go home. Just come back soon. I was happy, but embarrassed. And as I said that, the president patted my shoulder and said firmly,
Even if you're embarrassed, it is sad if you keep it hidden. You should say what you think while you can. That's not an exception for families who know you well.
It's something I'm always told. Don't test people. I glanced at the director. She was smiling warmly. I'm sorry. I apologized to the president and the director. It's my first payday soon, so I want to give a dinner as a present. Both the president and the director praised me with smiles. And on another day, I treated the director to high-quality steak with my first paycheck.
You've grown so much since you were a baby.
The director said with tears of joy streaming down her face. I decided to keep working diligently from now on. Time passed, and I turned 35. One day, the president gathered all the employees for a meeting. I attended the meeting as a representative of the HR department. The president happily announced that his daughter, who had completed her studies abroad, would be returning to the U.S. to take over the company. He said that after the next fiscal year, he would become the chairman, and his daughter would become the new president. There was some anxiety, but it was the president's decision. I resolved to continue supporting the new president and work hard. Then came the first day of the new president's arrival. Her name was Tiffany. As a returnee, she had grace, and her smiling face resembled that of the former president. We were close in age, so she was friendly.
John, you seem so mature for your age.
That's what the new president, Tiffany, said, and I responded with a bit of hesitation. I guess I started working at an early age. Tiffany was really competent. With her natural brightness and skillful communication, she quickly grew and even secured contracts with overseas partners. Then, a significant project came our way. Thanks to the client's approval of my handling, we were able to collaborate and successfully complete the project together. As we grew closer, there was a moment during a lunch outing when Tiffany casually remarked,
John, you're really good at customer service. What did you major in at college?
Suddenly, I was at a loss for words. The former president hadn't mentioned anything about me. Nevertheless, I decided not to hide it and told her. I didn't go to college. I grew up in an orphanage since my parents weren't around, so I started working right after high school. I'm glad you think so highly of me. It was embarrassing, but I felt Tiffany would accept me for who I am. But Tiffany's expression darkened. Setting down the dishes she was holding, Tiffany quickly gathered her belongings and stood up.
Are you seriously just a high school graduate? Working with someone from the bottom of the barrel like you, it's going to tarnish the company's reputation. You don't need to come in tomorrow.
With those quiet words, Tiffany left. I was left dumbfounded by the sudden turn of events, unable to even protest. It was essentially a termination notice. On the way home, I reflected on everything that had happened. I should have been recognized for my accomplishments, despite any scolding or condescension. I never imagined I would be judged solely based on my education. It felt like everything I had worked hard for was suddenly meaningless, so I just went home. I spent several days at home. I didn't feel like doing anything, and there was no contact from the company. For the time being, I thought I should start job hunting before my savings ran out. So I flipped through job listings in newspapers, repeatedly sighing and closing them whenever I saw the words bachelor's degree or higher. One day, on my way back from buying groceries for a few days, after a long time, my phone rang, and I nervously looked at the screen to see the name Alex. Alex and I grew up in the same orphanage and were like brothers, spending our childhood together because we were the same age. He was an old friend I had known since elementary school. I hurriedly answered the phone, and a familiar voice greeted me.
John, long time no see. Do you remember me?
He had always been a cheerful guy, and it was comforting to know that hadn't changed. Long time. I remember you. You seem to be doing well. Alex quickly noticed the lack of enthusiasm in my voice.
You don't sound too good. Can you come out for a bit? I'm nearby. Let's grab a drink.
When I asked for Alex's whereabouts, it turned out he was indeed close by. Since I didn't have any plans, I accepted his invitation and quickly went home to change. After getting ready, I rushed to the meeting place. Having been in the hometown for a long time, I had accepted the changing cityscape as a natural thing. But Alex, who appeared right on time, murmured softly, "The area in front of the station has changed." We entered a bar and caught up with each other over recent events and old stories. It had been a while since I had drunk alcohol, so I got fairly drunk quite quickly. But Alex, although he drank a lot, he wasn't drunk at all. After chatting for a while, when the conversation died down, I decided to explain my situation with the help of alcohol. I started working right after high school, remember?
Yay, but it's not just about education. How many years have you been working as a professional?
I got fired just because I only had a high school diploma by the newly appointed president. Alex's eyes widened in shock at my words.
No way, you've been working so hard. I heard it from the former orphanage's director. So, are you unemployed now?
Alex hit a nerve, but it was the truth. I nodded quietly.
Then come interview at my company. I'll talk to my boss.
Alex said as he started dialing someone. Feeling embarrassed for showing my pathetic side, I felt a sense of shame, but when Alex returned after the call, he flashed a thumbs up and smiled. I asked Alex about the details of the interview, and he arranged the interview schedule for another day. After that, Alex and I promised to see each other again, and as it was getting late, we each went home. A few days later, I went to the interview at the company Alex had introduced me to. It wasn't like the business partners I had dealt with before, but rather a locally oriented company that deals directly with regular customers. Excited about the new environment, I listened to what they had to say. The president there said he wanted me to start working as soon as I was ready. It seemed like he valued me for who I am more than my academic background or upbringing. It made me happy. On the way home, I called Alex, who was delighted as if it were his own success. Since I still had belongings at my previous company and there were some document-related matters, I told him I would contact him as soon as everything was sorted out and hung up. I leisurely made my way home. Around that time, it seemed like something serious was happening at my previous company. I found out from a call with a colleague that the chairman had rushed to the company during today's operations. The chairman arrived at the company and immediately gasped for breath, saying,
Tiffany, where is the advisor?
Who are you talking about?
The president replied, clearly taken aback. Actually, a few months ago, I was assigned to take care of a girl, Helen, the granddaughter of the chairman's friend, at a company. For the past few decades, I've mainly been involved in jobs related to personnel and education within the company. Having learned about what it means to be human from the chairman, I had intended to adopt the chairman's approach to the company's educational policy and talent development. And quietly, I had been working as the advisor within the company. Helen was a hopeful and charming young woman from the first time I saw her. I had hoped that things would go smoothly, but it seems that the president has become stricter since I was fired, causing Helen to lose confidence and consider quitting. Well, Tiffany is the type to speak her mind without considering the other person's feelings. It pains me to think about Helen, but there's nothing I can do.
So, the chairman came to find John, the advisor.
And then what happened? My colleague seemed a bit surprised by my eager question, but continued.
You mean that high school graduate? I just fired him recently. This company isn't suitable for people with low education. I can't work with someone like him. It's embarrassing.
The president spoke proudly while fixing her makeup in the mirror, but it was easy to imagine the chairman getting angrier by the second, his face turning redder. It seemed it was the first time the usually mild-mannered chairman had been so angry. I've never seen anything like it.
Can you believe you fired him for that reason?
At his loud roar, the president was surprised. The office fell silent, and the employees watched nervously.
Where is John? Do you think there's someone as talented as him just lying around? It's not easy to find a replacement for him. Haven't I taught you that people are our greatest asset and need to be valued?
Even if he's talented, he hasn't accomplished anything significant since then, has he? Isn't the reason he can't produce results because he lacks education? If that's the case, why not nurture someone with proper education from scratch?
The president seemed not to understand the chairman's words. The chairman clenched his fists.
John always had a grasp of every employee and cared about them. Don't you understand why our company has such a low turnover rate?
Saying so, the chairman placed several envelopes containing resignation letters on the desk.
What are these?
These are from recently. I thought John was still here, so I asked everyone to wait a little longer. What's going on when I rushed over after hearing about Helen?
The president nervously began to read the many resignation letters, all expressing dissatisfaction with her. She gradually turned pale.
Tiffany, apologize to the employees right away. You can't run the company alone.
With that, the chairman took the president's hand and helped her up from her chair. Then, she apologized to all the employees in tears. I see. It must have been tough. My colleague muttered quietly to me.
Please come back.
I'll think about it, I replied before hanging up the phone. I had my reservations, and I was afraid that my presence wouldn't change the situation. A few days later, the intercom rang early in the morning. When I answered in my pajamas, both the chairman and the president were standing there.
John, I'm truly sorry. You worked harder than anyone else to carry out my intentions perfectly.
I apologize for judging you solely based on your education.
They apologized sincerely to me. I am sorry for my clothes like this. Please raise your heads, both of you. It is true that I have no educational background. Even in such a situation, I remained modest. I thought about how I had internalized what the chairman had always told me, not to outright deny others.
I realized that I've been able to achieve results one by one since I took office, all thanks to you. We're really struggling without you. Please come back.
Could you work with us again?
I hesitated, but because I was also concerned about Helen, I agreed to return to the company for the time being. When I returned to the office after a long absence, I was surprised to see my colleagues and Helen looking so downcast. Their spirits were extremely low. I listened to everyone's stories and submitted improvement proposals to the president. I also had several interviews with Helen, gradually bringing back her smile. Increasing my contact with the president, we managed to bridge the gap successfully.
I was praised by the president today. It's all thanks to you, John. And she even apologized to me for everything before. I was so surprised.
Laughing, Helen said, "It's because you worked hard. I'm glad," I replied with a smile. After a while, the company regained its vitality. With a certain level of talent development and the business settling down, things were looking up. It seemed like the president had also had a change of heart, as she had improved significantly compared to the early days. While her blunt habit remained, she was now capable of providing proper support, and people began to gather around her more often. Helen had also grown steadily since then, and now she could handle her job almost as well as the president's right-hand person. Seeing everyone like this, I felt that it was okay to stay in this company. However, I became curious about exploring a new world. When I consulted about changing jobs, everyone was surprised, but when I explained it was for positive reasons, they all supported me. I guess this company will be fine without me. I officially submitted my resignation and contacted Alex. Alex was delighted and immediately processed my employment procedures. And so, it was decided that I would start working the following week. There was a lot to learn at the new workplace, and it kept me busy, but everything was fresh and enjoyable. 3 months later, after getting accustomed to the job, I invited the chairman, Max, to have a dinner together.
I'm glad John asked me out for dinner.
Max said with a smile that hadn't changed since before. I respect you just as much as I do the director. Upon hearing that, he smiled again. I'm truly grateful for everything you've done for me. Even though I don't have parents, I've always thought of you as a real father figure. I finally managed to say what I had always wanted to.
Of course. Although I don't have a son myself, I consider you a real son to me. You can always rely on me if you need anything. I support you.
Max said this with a hint of tears in his eyes.
We seem to have let go of the most valuable person.
What?
Just kidding. Just an old man's rambling.
With that, he chuckled gently. I met Max and learned a lot about human connection and compassion. Especially in a large organization like a company, you can't do it alone.
That's why employees are the most important thing to me.
He always said, and I've been responding by working diligently. That's how companies and societies keep running. The world is full of unfairness, but I don't judge people based on their appearance or title. I respond with kindness to those who treat me well. Max taught me the importance of valuing my colleagues. So, even at my new workplace, I've pledged to keep that feeling in mind and work hard